For the 21st year in a row, the San Francisco Documentary Film Festival is about to kick off. It starts Wednesday online and with screenings at the Roxy Theater. One of those films, Eternal Spring. So joining us live right now, Jason Loftus, producer of Eternal Spring. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's afternoon where I am, but it's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, even better, because a lot of times when we talk to people at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're kind of like, I'm good, I'm getting here. So I'm glad you're refreshed and joining us. Well, one thing that immediately makes this documentary stand out, the animations. Wow, when I first watched the trailer, I was completely blown away by all of it. And it's not random, so we're going to get into that in a moment. But tell us the high-level explanation of what this is all about.
Yeah, it's a unique mix of animation and live action, and it comes about really because we're exploring this. It's a hijacking of the state television. So in China, there was a group of people in Northeast China. Their religious faith had been persecuted by the government. They didn't have a voice, and they hatched a plan to hack into the state-run television to counter the narrative that was being put out there about them. And we meet this, I was working on a Kung Fu video game a few years ago, and I met this really talented artist. And he had this amazing story of why he had to flee China. And we just thought, what an amazing way to look at this through his artwork and kind of bring that to life in animation. And so this way, I mean, there's been some other documentaries that have used animation, I think have done very well with that. But I thought it was a unique opportunity to see how the artist himself and the art in his process of creation can be part of the story in the film. And so that's what this is here, is we see this character, this artist, Dashong, drawing his memories and why he had to leave his home.
So cool. And, so I'm learning here that the artist connects with someone who escaped China after this, and then that changed everything for them. What happened there?
Yeah, so they're both belong to the community in China, Falun Gong community. These are people who practice a kind of yoga type meditation, and they have their spiritual beliefs. And the Chinese government essentially banned this practice in 1999, and these people were being arrested and denounced in the state media. Now, Dashong is an artist. He's drawn for Justice League, Star Wars, and he's drawn with some top novelists in China as well in the Kung Fu space. And he was not actually involved in this effort to hijack the state television, but he was caught up in it anyway, because in the aftermath of this, like, no one had ever basically had any kind of intervention in the state's monopoly on media. It's like, it was just a very bold action. So he had to flee in the aftermath. And then we meet the lone surviving TV hijacker who has made his way out of China. He's living in Korea. We found him there. And this is an opportunity for Dashong to kind of piece together an event that changed his life, but to understand from the perspective of someone who was involved in it, why did they do this? Why were they willing to risk so much just to speak up and counter the government's narrative and sort of flag an injustice when they saw it? Why were they willing to risk as much as they did?
Oh, wow. That is very interesting. I definitely didn't know that last part. I do realize here that art plays into the entire story. Is this all from the artist? And how did you pull off these animations? Because they really feel like they are jumping off the pages and that you're really in the moment. It doesn't feel, like cartoons as kids, how it all looks a little flat.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We tried to create an art style that was basically, we're using as much as possible this hand-drawn comic illustration style, because that's coming from the artist, Dashong himself. But we wanted to be able to move through the space. Comics are static and they're 2D, and we wanted to be able to bring people into that environment themselves. So what we did was we had Dashong draw and illustrate sort of storyboards as we were telling the story. And then we would build it in 3D software. and then we would print that out from different angles, and he would just draw on a blank sheet and just do all of the details and the illustrations. We would scan that. So this trolley car that you see there, if you look closely, you can actually see like markers on it. That's actually been hand markered, and we would even just scan all of
Oh.
his colors and illustrations and put it in the 3D space. So you get this combination of 3D perspective, but this constant kind of feeling of his aesthetic, because it's his story, it's his experience that we're witnessing come alive on screen. So it was just, we were able to marry his illustrations with some animation work that we do in our studio to bring hopefully a very unique aesthetic to this film.
Wow. Jason, that's awesome. I'm also curious, lastly here, have you received any pushback from Chinese state officials on this?
Yeah, so I met Dashong when we were making a Kung Fu video game, and it featured a lot of hand-drawn art. That game was going to be published by Tencent, which is a major media company in China, and they're really big in the gaming space. But in the midst of making this film, the Chinese government contacted my business partners at Tencent, as well as my wife's family in China. So they forced them to cut ties with my company. And my wife's family, who are still in China, were put under pressure there as well, saying, hey, we know what you're up to overseas. So it really hit home, because people know that, hey, there's a human rights situation in China. It's difficult to tell some of these stories. But when it starts to happen to you, you realize, yeah, this is real. But then, of course, we're meeting these people who are coming out of China. They're risking so much to be able to speak up. And we figured, hey, we still need to give them a voice. It's important to do that. So, we continued. And I think the way that audiences are connecting with this film is really, really encouraging for us. It means it was all worthwhile.
Wow, that is incredible. Jason, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I can't wait to see Eternal Spring. Everybody premieres at the Roxy Theater Wednesday night. It is also available for streaming. So for more information on this and all the films at San Francisco's Documentary Festival, go to sfindy.com. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for having me.